Greetings, viewers, and welcome to our Sage 200 Branch Accounting Sync webinar. Today's presentation will include the following: an introduction, the data recovery via the sync monitor process, sync errors and troubleshooting, as well as the sync file structure. Now, what's important to understand is that there may be instances whereby in a branch accounting environment, you may need to restore either the head office or the branch database. Now, it really is a process which you need to plan quite carefully to ensure that the right data is obviously restored at the right time. However, we do have the ability to perform a process called data recovery at the head office sync monitor for a specific branch. And that's the focus of our presentation today. Let's see exactly how that process unfolds. So what I have here is I have a head office consisting of 6 branches, and we're then going to be doing a data recovery for branch number 6. Right, so I'm just going to open up my evolution first, and as you can see, I've gone into my specific branch that I intend to do a data recovery for, and I've got a couple of records there. Now, the first thing we need to do is we're going to go back to our head office, and I'm going to highlight that branch. I'm then going to go to custom export, and you'll see that there's a data recovery option there. So I'm going to use that, and it's going to tell me where do I want this output path to be for the data recovery file. I can specify the default location, or else I can override it to a specific location. Right, so I'm going to, at this point, I'm going to do a data recovery, and I specified that option, and I'm going to go say okay there. And what you'll see is happening is that it's exporting data from that particular branch. So this process may take a while depending on the amount of data within that specific branch. So we need to just wait for this process to complete, and just be aware that there may be some moments of silence while the process is being completed, and we will just continue with the presentation once this exporting of data has been completed. Right, so the process is still, or the files are still being exported, and we'll continue once this process has completed. Right, so that process has been completed. Now, the important thing, let's just go check what that file looks like. So I'm going to go back into my specific location where the file was exported to. And what you'll notice is that you see I now have a file there which has got the relevant numbering sequence. But the important thing to remember is that we've got our 0 being the head office. It's then been sent, or the export was done for branch number 6. And the very important thing to understand is that that file now has got a D, which means it's a data recovery file. So the D just differentiates between a normal file and a data recovery file. So there we have it, from the head office of branch number 6, and we can see it's a data recovery file by the D option there. Okay, so that process has now been completed, and we can then continue the data recovery. Now I'm just going to go back into our database, and I'm just going to go add a new record here, which is going to be an accounts payable record. Right, so I'm just going to right, so I'm adding a new record there. That's all I need to do. And we now have 3 suppliers there, 2 being global suppliers and 1 being a normal or branch-specific supplier. Let's go and close this, and we'll come back to that later. Now, what we need to do now is the process now means we now need to go create a new database where we're going to restore that data recovery file into. Note, it is a new database, not a new branch. So I'm simply going to go into at the branch, and I'm going to say new, and I'm going to go create a new database here. So once again, the normal process, and now I'm going to say, for example, right, so I'm going to call it a data recovery branch. And if I go next, I'm going to insert the relevant details there of my SQL server, the common database. Let's just wait for the comment to appear there. Okay, there we go. And it's now going to be marked as a branch database. And very importantly, I now need to go browse for my branch configuration file, which is the configuration file that was created when the original branch was set up. So there I have it. It's my evolution branch configuration file for that specific branch, and I'm going to select it. And once again, as you'll notice, is that the branch ID remains at 6. So the branch ID, nothing has changed there. I've simply imported a configuration file from an existing branch into my new database. And there we have the details. Next. And we're then going to go create the new database as a branch-specific database with the original configuration file. Right, let's just wait for the process to complete. And let's just wait for this process to complete, then we can continue. Right, so my branch database has been created, and we now need to process an initial import. Right, so we can just finish off this process. And as you can see, we now have our data recovery branch available on our login screen. Now, we now need to go, we still have our branch there. I'm now going to go open up the sync monitor at the branch. Right, there we go. So this is our branch database, sync monitor. And now under my connect, I'm simply going to go change the company name to my data recovery. We'll just select that data recovery branch. Right, just give it a couple of seconds. Right, so now I'm going to go link the sync monitor to my data recovery branch. And let's just say next. And we're good to go. Now we need to go locate the particular file that we've exported for the data recovery. So I'm going to go and locate, and let's just go find that file that we exported on the data recovery. There we go. And let's just go find the file. Right, let's just go, there we go. So we've got it from head office to branch number 6, data recovery file, and we're good to go. And now we're importing the data recovery into our new database. We'll just let that complete the process. And then we'll be able to open up the new database, which has got all the information from our data recovery, and we can see that process unfolding. Right, there's my importing. We're importing the data recovery file. So all the information in the original branch is now being imported and the views are being refreshed, etc., which is a normal import process for a new database. And right, we have success. The initial import was completed successfully. And now we're just going to go into our recovery database and we'll check the details there. Updating system tree. Just perform a GL reeling for the first time we open up the database. Right, let's just go check our supplier information. So if we go to accounts payable, I'm going to go to maintenance. And if I go to my suppliers, what you'll notice is that we only, at this point in time, only have those two global suppliers. The supplier that we created, which was branch specific, is no longer there, simply because the data recovery file has been restored and it's overwritten that particular record. So as you can see, we now have a data recovery file, which was a backup made of the branch, which we've now restored into a new database. And I'm just going to go back into my branch sync monitor. And if I go to my connect, you'll notice is that we've got our new database there, which is a recovery database. And if I then go back to my head office, you'll see that has remained the same. No problem there. Everything is in order. The branch ID has remained the same. So that information will now simply go and sync into the new database, the recovery database, and the branch ID and everything has remained the same. So as you can see, that's a process in order for you to perform a data recovery. So it's simply a case of specifying the particular branch, processing or exporting that information, creating an export file with a D indicator being data recovery, going to go create a new database, note a new database, not a new branch, and then on the branch accounting, on the branch sync monitor, simply connect it to the new database, and then go and do the import of the data recovery. Also very important to remember is that you need to have the original branch configuration file available in order for you to create that new database. Right. Just go on and check a couple of error messages that you may encounter. So I've got a couple of messages here, and we'll just see ways in which we can resolve them. So first of all, you may encounter error messages where you've got posting errors, etc. And then the keywords here are correct this using the synchronization monitor utility. So whenever you see that particular phrase, it's simply a case of, for example, into the sync monitor, going to go to tools, and you can use the verified DB option there. So that's your first step of troubleshooting, either at the head office or the branch, depending on the error occurs. Go to tools and use the verified DB option there. Right, next we have the error which deals with a temporary file not found on server. Okay, so if you want to check this one out, we can either go to the head office, and this deals with the temp folders. So under my configuration, just check your update path section. Just ensure that the local root folder is valid and the path there is correct. If not, go modify it or specify a valid path and location, and then resync and see if that solves the problem. But the first step, obviously, just go check your local root, ensure those details are correct and valid. Right. Then we've got an instance identity invalid error. And it asks you to reconfigure the status of the server details. Okay, so in this particular instance, I'm going to go back to my sync monitor, and under my configuration, we'll go to diagnostics, and in this particular instance, just go back to communication. Under diagnostics, just ensure that the subscriber name and the password are filled in there and they are correct. And then just ensure that if the verify option is available, click on verify and just ensure that the subscriber name and the password are in fact verified and everything is in order there. So just check out those details. If you have the error, for example, instance in identity invalid. Right, then we've got the connection to the server is not active. Right, so for that, we need to go check details about the FTP connection on the sync monitor. So if I go to my communication under the FTP server section, just ensure that the server name, the user, and also the port number is valid there, being port 21. Check those details, modify as required, and then just use a test connection to ensure that the test has succeeded. And you can then confirm that those details are correct. So just go check out those details if you encounter something such as a connection to server error message. Right, then we've got the, next we have the socket errors. So socket errors really relate to an FTP connection or loss in FTP connection. Very common, for example, the FTP connection may have been lost or the FTP connection may have been closed while a sync is being run, and you would then encounter something such as socket errors. You may also encounter socket errors. You may have come across them when setting up your email configuration with an Evolution and doing those test emails where there's a problem between the communication between your email or Exchange server and Evolution. You may encounter socket errors. So just ensure that the FTP is up and running and that there is connection between sync monitor and FTP site in order to resolve those type of socket errors. Right, then we've got things such as, for example, incorrect syntax near. Okay, so these normally relate to things like a compatibility between the SQL versions. So it's always important with these type of errors to ensure that you've checked what version of SQL you're running at the head office and ensure that at the branches, the same version of SQL is running. So always ensure that there's uniformity there, and also ensure that the collation between the SQL at the head office and the branches are exactly the same. So very important that you've got the same version of SQL running at the branch and the head office, and that the collation is the same across the board. So obviously ensure that there's uniformity with regards to the SQL configuration or SQL versions, as well as the SQL collation. Right. Then once again, things like, for example, you can't process to the sync monitor. And once again, the key being there, correct this using the synchronization monitor utility. So once again, we know it's a case of going into your tools and using the verify DB option and check that everything is in order there with your database. Right, then we've got details about, once again, something such as a logical consistency-based error, where, for example, a file could not be imported. In this case, it was a post-ST. So once again, check that you've got the correct version of SQL across the board, or the same version, and that your collation is correct. And then also something like, for example, about a passing of a parameter with various numbers. And once again, you've got the ability or message that a certain file could not be imported. So always go check that that server or the SQL configuration is correct. versions are the same and your collation is correct. Okay, so it's very important just to understand is that obviously with a branch setup, you may have somebody, a specific branch, or physically at the branch setting up the SQL. Always ensure that they are installing the same version across the board, as you would need to have that consistency within the branch accounting environment relating to SQL. Right, let's just go check at the file structures, which is very important to understand that concept. And what you'll notice is if you look on the right-hand side, we've got all the files that have been uploaded to certain databases. And what you'll notice is that they really form three particular sections. We've got a range of numbers, dash range of numbers, and then another range of numbers. Now, the important thing to remember is that we need to look firstly at the middle section, which really is the origin of this particular file. We all know that head office is always set to 0. So in this particular instance, look at the middle section and we know that head office is branch 0, which means that we're at the head office database and the files are going from head office. Right, then we look on the left-hand side. The left-hand side range of numbers signifies the branch number where it's going to. So in this particular instance, it's branch number 1, and we've got branch number 1 set up as Newcastle. And then on the right-hand side, we've got a numbering sequence for number of files. So in this particular example, the files originating from head office, it's going to branch number 1 being Newcastle, and it's the 66th file that's going to be updated at the branch in the branch database. So as you can see, we've got a whole range of files there going from head office to the first branch, and we've got our numbering sequence there. If you move it lower down, you'll see, for example, we've got a range of files going from head office to branch number 4 being Rudapert, and then we've got once again that numbering sequence there. Always important that you've got missing numbers. And as you can see, there's our sequencing. And once again, going this particular instance, head office to branch number 5, and we've got a range of files there. If I then go to my branch database and I say process now, what you'll notice is that we've got details about, in this particular instance, let's just go and find a range of files there. So I'm just going to go to my particular range and just go to the archive section there. And once again, if you look at this particular section, we've now got the range of files, but in this particular instance, it's gone from branch number 3 to the head office, and it's file number 26 that's being integrated or being processed at the particular branch. And once again, this particular instance, branch number 4 to head office, and we've got our range of numbers there. So always important to understand is that, for example, just by simply looking at a particular file or a DAT file, you can see exactly where it was originated, which branch it was sent to, and which specific numbering sequence it was made use of. Right, so that is just a breakdown of the file structures. So firstly, just go to a quick recap. We just did a breakdown of how to perform a data recovery. It's a case of going to a specific branch, using the custom export box, and then specifying data recovery. This will then export a file to a specified location. The file does have a D indicator, being it's a data recovery file. Once it's been completed, you would then need to go create a new database and then use the original configuration file of the branch, import the configuration file, and then create the database as a branch database. Now, very important to remember is that you're creating a new database, not a new branch. The branch ID, branch name, etc., and description remain the same. And once you've done that, simply go and at the branch database or the branch sync monitor under the connect box, simply go and specify the new database name. And once you've done that, do initial import. It's a case of simply going to go and browse for the data recovery file and then simply go and import that information, and you've then got the data recovery file in your new database. We then cover the various error messages, things like what the important thing there is just ensuring that there is always connectivity between the FTP server and your databases and your sync monitor to ensure that files are being synced at the regular intervals and there's no lost connection. And then also very importantly, to ensure that you are using the same version of SQL at the branch and the head office, and also ensuring that your collations are the same. And finally, we dealt with the file structure. Always remember, broken up into 3 sections, being your originating branch or your origin, which is the middle section, the left-hand side being where it's going to, signifying the branch number, and then on the right-hand side, simply the numbering sequence of the branch or the files that are being synced to the head office or the branch database. I do hope that this webinar has been useful. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's over and out for me. Thank you and goodbye.